Hey everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to another DM's Guild review, my written and video review series where I take a look at the adventures and supplemental material at the Dungeon Masters Guild website. With this video, I'll be reviewing the DM's Guild Adventure Compendium Hellbound Heists, designed by Bryan, Holmes, Chad Lensch, Christian Eichhorn, Steve Jaspor Orr, John Parker, Joseph Egmond, Justice Arman, Ryan Langr, and Zavier Bates. For Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition. A review copy has been provided for the purposes of this review. If you enjoy my videos, consider using my affiliate links for your DM's Guild shopping and supporting me via patreon.com/roguewatson. Shout out to my platinum patrons, Andrew, Richard, Joe, Will, Tiny Dancer, Nick, and Rivzung, and gold patrons, RPG Papercrafts, Charming Grenade, Pretty Boy, and Yuma, Marcos de Vicente, Gilberto, Sean, A.K., Cert2B, Adam, Dead Lizard Lounge, and Sam. Thank you all very much for your support. In the full interest of disclosure and transparency, one of the designers of this adventure compilation, Joseph Egmond, is one of my longest-standing patrons and supporters of the channel, RPG Papercrafts. I have reviewed their work before. They are a creator on the DM's Guild. We haven't had any conflicts of interest yet, but I definitely want to be upfront about any kind of relationship status there, so it is what it is. But I feel like I can do a pretty good unbiased series of reviews. I'll leave you all to give me comments on that. But in this case especially, there is no specific attribution to who did what adventure. So there are a collection of adventures, heists, and they're all done by different designers. They've all come together. That's kind of a complaint I have in general when it comes to like the DM's Guild Adept program stuff. Is I like that idea a lot, but I do wish more of them actually did say who contributed to what specific parts, especially if it's a very obvious case of this person did this whole adventure, this person did this whole adventure. I understand if it's a collaborative work and people are spitballing ideas, and obviously if it's really hard to separate that. But in a lot of these cases, I do feel like it is people doing specific chunks of the project, and then you're just combining these things under a certain theme. So in that case, I would like to see like actual individual designers, and that way, if I particularly like somebody's work, that as somebody that's reading it through, I can then go, okay, I want to look up more of this designer's work. So Hellbound Heists, at first glance, Descent to Avernus just came out. It's technically October now, but September 2019. And this came out pretty much at the same time. So I'm thinking, all right, cool. This is a supplement of adventures specifically designed for Descent into Avernus with, obviously, the Hell theme. That's not actually what's going on here, though. Hellbound Heists is actually it does use the Hell theme, obviously. But there are 9 adventures included, and each one represents a different layer of the 9 Hells in the D&D universe. Now, Descent into Avernus only takes place, the last 2/3 of it, in Avernus, which is the top layer of Hell. So only one of these adventures actually takes place in Avernus. The others all take place in the different levels. There's Dees, there's Mineros, there's, God, don't make me list them all, Stygia, Cania, I don't know. That's a good trivia question. What are the 9 levels of Hell? So it doesn't quite fit into Descent into Avernus. It's not necessarily designed to be that. It was not marketed that way. I just thought, literally as me seeing, okay, this product just released, it's got that Hell theme, it must be tied to Descent into Avernus. I just want to be very clear and upfront that that is really not the case. And the other reason it's not is because this is mostly Tier 3 and Tier 4 adventures, because Hell is no joke, and the deeper you go, the harder things get. So really only maybe the first or second could be used even level-wise within Descent into Avernus. Now, if you're looking for hellish content after a Descent into Avernus campaign, then I think Hellbound Heists could serve you pretty well. Or if you just want, Hell-related adventures in whatever your higher-level custom content campaign is, then obviously this can work very well for that. As I said, this has 9 adventures. Each one is about 20 to 30 pages long. The amount of content here is staggering. Any single one of these adventures could have easily been its own separate DM's Guild product. It's really incredible that all of these were put together. I mean, the amount of text and things on screen, it's just, I don't know what the word count is, but it's incredible. Like, because a lot of times when I see these big products, they'll have like full page artwork, for example, and that kind of not pads it out, but that's helps balance things out. This one, I didn't think it was like low on art or anything, but it definitely does not have giant art pages that take up the page real estate. It is almost 300 pages, and that is a ton of text and not just big full color art pages. So that's something to consider for sure. I am very, very positive on Hellbound Heists. I think all of the adventures, the batting average is just incredible. Like, none of them are bad. There's some of them that I like more than others, obviously. I would rate them anywhere from like pretty good to this looks amazing. None of them I would say, you know, some of them are weaker than others, but none of them I would say like this is bad or this doesn't work or I don't see this working, which is really cool. I think when you have that many, usually when I see a quantity of a lot of things, the average is I'm not going to like some of those things. That's just the law of averages. In this case, really good average here. They're all, you know, if there's a scale from 1 to 10 with an actual like, you know, 5 being average, I would say the overall average is probably something like a 7 or 8, which is really, really high for that number of adventures. So really impressive. I am going to go through them, but I'm going to go super fast. We're going to skim through because, as I said, there are 9 adventures. Any one of these I would normally be reviewing for like a single review. This review, by the way, took me like a week. And also, this is like the 3rd time I'm recording this review because I recently tried to get a new headset because mine is unfortunately falling apart. And the mic quality was so bad that I literally had to just scrap those reviews and go back to this old one for now. So is what it is, but I'm very well versed in it now. But unfortunately, I can't quite get the detailed, you know, pick apart an individual adventure as much as I would because there's so much here that I just can't do that unless you want to sit here for 2 hours and watch me look at this adventure. And maybe some of you do, but that's not what I'm going to do. Instead, we're going to go through and blaze fairly quickly through Hellbound Heists and just give you an idea of the kind of adventures that you will see here. The beginning does talk about hell in general, the 9 layers. Each one has its own, you know, region. There's the one that's just a dystopian city. There's, you know, ice wastelands. There's classic volcano stuff going on. A lot of really good, interesting locations there. There's notes about how, you know, devils work, how contracts work. How you get in and out of hell, because that's an interesting challenge. Some adventures do include special ways to get in and out, and then the higher level ones almost just kind of shrug and be like, well, whatever, you're level 17, you've got fucking ways to get to hell if you need to, basically, which is, I'm fine with that, because at that point, you probably do have ways. There are a few new player options. There's a new background, a former cultist, a new faction, 1 new spell, and 1 new adventuring gear, almost not worth including in there. There is a full 40, 50 page appendix at the end that includes all the new monster stat blocks and the new magic items, as well as a few handouts. And you can imagine with 9 adventures, there just is a lot of new stuff there, which is really cool. A lot of new demons and devils, obviously. All right, the first one, the Avernus job, takes place on Avernus. It involves orcs, specifically the Spear of Grumsh, which is this big kind of tower that's been put into Avernus. Players are sent there to retrieve a, you know, MacGuffin, and a bunch of demons are coming at them because they light up the tower, and they have to be able to quell this kind of civil war amongst these orcs who still live there. There's the Bone Snappers and the Organ Grinders. There's a really fun Hatfield and McCoy situation where they hate each other, but they're not necessarily super hostile with the players themselves. One of them like stole an abyssal chicken from the other one, and they can kind of work that out. And the end has a really cool, thrilling climax where you get on the war wagon and bust through, and these hordes of demons are following you, and there's this really cool chase sequence rules. Really, really interesting ending there. The war machines do factor into a number of these adventures, which I like to see because I think that's a big factor in Descent into Avernus. I would go so far as to say probably a fan favorite element of these cool Mad Max death machines. So they are, you will see some of those here in these adventures. The heist theme is used pretty well in a lot of these. There's a lot of different kinds of heist, and, you know, heist is very much defined as a series of checkboxes. Like you have a mission giver, an informant, somebody that tells you about something that they need to get, or a person you need to extract. You need to get into an area. It's more about reconnaissance and stealth and maybe role-playing than it is about just smashing down doors of a dungeon and going room to room kind of a thing. And then usually there's maybe some betrayal or some complications that happen, and then the end is usually a big kind of climactic chase or sequence or an events where everything is kind of breaks down and you have to go. That is literally like the cliche heist, and within that, I think each of these has those story elements, those plot beats, but there's still really cool variations you can see. Some of them stick pretty close to the formula, and others really stretch the definition of what a heist is to its benefit, I feel like. Now, the maps, unfortunately, this is where things go a little bit south for me. The map quality is very inconsistent. Some adventures have color grid maps. Others just have kind of black and white graph paper map or the Dyson logo style maps. It really is to where each individual creator, I guess, supplied their own maps or had their own maps done by somebody else or something, to where it's very different between different adventures. None of them are particularly satisfying, which is a big bummer for me. I will always comment on the map quality because I'm somebody that runs primarily on Roll20, and we use, you know, virtual tabletop, and we use battle maps. Now, a heist, especially, you know, you don't need a whole bunch of maps, but they usually always take place in one central location. You know, the main act of the event, where you have to go in and get the thing and then get out. And that needs to be a very carefully mapped, detailed area, because typically there's a lot of like security and patrols and things you have to worry about. So these things need to be mapped very well. And unfortunately, all of these adventures, one of them does an okay job, which is actually my favorite adventure coming up. But for the most part, very, very disappointing in the maps. And you don't even get separate. There is a handout included, like a separate zip file that has player handouts. But it's almost enough handouts for like maybe 2 adventures, not certainly for 9. It's actually a really low number of handouts. I was pretty surprised. And only one of them actually has like separate player handouts, which is even of the maps, which is even more disappointing. Again, that's my favorite one coming up, which is the Dees Protocol. This one takes place on Dees, which, if you can't tell, these are in order of the layers of hell, which means for once, instead of a compilation being listed alphabetically, it is finally listed by level, which I really like, although I think that's more because of the layers of hell. But as you go deeper in the layers of hell, keep doing this with my hands too, the level requirement goes up. So already the first mission, I believe, was designed for level 8, so we're in high tier 2 technically, and then for this one we are optimized for player level 9. Again, high tier 2. From here on out, it's going to be tier 3 all the way up till tier 4, and by tiers I mean, of course, the 25% of each level range, which adds on to the general balance of D&D, which is cool. I think there's not a lot of tier 3 and tier 4 content in the DM's Guild or in supplemental adventures. I mean, look at what Wizards of the Coast produced with their mainline campaign adventures. All of them are level 1 through like 11 and 12. That's where the majority of D&D is being played, which I understand why they do that, but that still leaves a lot of people who actually want to continue these campaigns, continue these characters up into the demigod status without a lot of actual published supplemental material that they can draw upon. So I think this is a really good resource specifically for if you're looking for really interesting adventure missions for higher level players. That being said, this one, the second one, Dees Protocol, is my favorite. I think it really does a great job getting that heist flavor. You have to I love the way it starts too, and there's a lot of really good adventure hooks in these adventures, and some of them they have the adventure hooks of like, here's 3 different options, but then it's like, instead of just being that one initial intro, it's like, okay, and here's the ending that changes depending on which of your adventure hooks you use. So that's almost like the different branches that you chose that dictate the overarching story. This one, the adventure hook, is you literally like wake up from the river Styx, your memory's wiped, and you just have a message. It's like, agents, thank you for accepting the mission, kind of a thing, where you're working for a demon trying to get their like contract out of Dees. But first you have to go to see an informant, and then the informant tells you, okay, here's the keys that we need. You have to go into this pyramid archive building in order to retrieve the blood sample keys that are being used. There's a series of clues you can see here that all involve skill checks and being able to pay attention to where you need to go and what you're looking at. There's a lot of good player agency in here where you can really explore and hunt down clues. I really love that element a lot. And this map is the best map of the bunch, and it's still not a great map. You can see it's not very attractive at all. It might as well just be a 3D office building instead of a demonic archive with a bunch of cool security measures and demons and stuff roaming around. But it is the most functional map because, and this one is included as a separate player handout, so you could slide that into a VTT. Obviously, I would need to put some set dressings on it to make it useful, but there's just a lot of neat stuff going on, and you can see the way the map literally overlaps on itself, so you can picture the pyramid kind of ziggurat structure that's going on. Look at that, it's like a laser grid in number 17. Like, it's got that cool security checkpoint vibe with obviously a lot of neat demon stuff going on. Very, very cool. I absolutely love this one. Once you figure out that what you need, you then take these like Hell Screamer paragliders up to the top, and you know, shunt in through the ventilation shafts, and you're going through. It's just got that great flavoring. There's a cool betrayal at the end where the informant turns on you. You teleport back, and you're in their cage, but they've got a slod as a slave essentially, and you can work with the slod to overturn them. Really, really good. Hits all those check marks really well. I think it's a fantastic mission, and I think Dees is probably the most interesting to me of all the different layers of hell, because it is just a big urban devilish area, and I think that's really different than a lot of the just generic wastelands of like, here's the swamp wasteland, here's the ice wasteland. This is like, no, this is a city. And I think that's a really cool aesthetic and location. So Dees Protocol is probably my #1 favorite mission of the bunch. Come Hell or High Water is the one in the swamp area. This one is pretty straightforward. It's, I would say, one of the weaker ones in my opinion, but again, none of them are particularly bad. It's just not quite as interesting. And it is a single area, kind of a smash and grab heist. You have to go into a laboratory. There's a really good, you know, swamp acid theme here with a lot of black dragons, a lot of loot here. Really cool laboratory setup that you have to steal from in order to get this herb back. Archdevil's Gambit takes place in Felgathos, where a Dwerger Smith has been you think they've been like kidnapped, but actually he's like signed his soul away to be with the what's the woman's name? The daughter Fierna, Belial's daughter, who I think is a succubus of some sort. This one is also a well, it's a prison rescue mission, which is interesting. But the first like half of it is actually gathering information. But instead of going somewhere and getting a bunch of clues, you are talking to a lot of devils, including one that like asks you a bunch of riddles. And if you answer those riddles correctly, then you get more information about where you're going. So that's kind of cool. There are some neat ideas in here. There's a beholder chained to a floor through a harpoon, and he can only go so far, so he's kind of being tortured, which I like the fact that like every creature is being tortured in hell. But next to him he's got a beholder zombie, which he has named Jeff. That's awesome. I need more information about Beholder Zombie Jeff. Fantastic. There's a really cool part where there's air elementals in a room where there's a bunch of broken shards on the ground, so when they do their whirlwind attack, these shards do extra damage. Just kind of neat ideas like that. There's the actual prison map, which again looks cool, but I don't like this map style particularly at all, and there's not a separate player handout for it anyway, which is really disappointing, but it seems like a good adventure, pretty standard. Broken Heaven is another prison rescue mission. This time you're rescuing an angel from this floating ice prison, and you have to get a airship, which is kind of the first half of this one, which is really fun. Skipping down to where the actual airship map is. That's a really cool looking airship map. And this one, you go in and you can see here on the earlier picture, there's like a vertical part to the prison where you have to go in through like the tower, and it's a really neat setup. There's just a verticality to it. You have to go down, and each room has different things going on and people being tortured and whatnot. It's a cool idea. Otherwise pretty standard rescue mission, but again, I think it's an interesting location. Meltdown Masquerade in Malbolge is probably my #3 top mission if I were ranking them. It's got the neatest idea. Instead of being a prison heist or a security heist, this one you are in a ball, like a ball, Cinderella ball, a big party with a bunch of devils, which is already a fantastic setting. You're there to steal a mask, or there are, I guess, different adventure hooks you could choose. But this one is the most breathtakingly complex and complicated of all of them. There are so many NPCs. You can see like all the main ones have their own desires, disruptions, resolutions, what rooms they're found in. And it has a series of events that happen that players can choose what they're doing when those events happen. Those events could draw certain patrons to certain areas. And because it's a devil, there are a bunch of devils there, and there's a big social standing. Some of them don't like each other, trying to work against each other. Some of them are allied. Devils are constantly trying to vie for power. At one point, there's like an old woman on her deathbed, and all the devils are like betting on her. So it's a really dark, twisted, macabre ball, which I think is a really fun theme. Very heavy on the role playing. Lots of really cool NPCs. Let's see, I wrote down some notes. There's a monodrome with 3 personalities, a gluttonous bone devil, a kobold butler, like head of staff named Gordon, and a flesh golem in a tuxedo with nothing but a large mouth. Just very, very cool idea. The only thing I don't like about this one is the organization is terrifying. Like I don't think it's very well organized. There's a lot going on, and like you've got the finishing adventure and plot overview smack dab in the middle of the adventure, and then the actual like events that happen are towards the end, where it has here are all the characters in the beginning. So that's not at all how I would organize things. It's already a very complex scenario, and I think that that's exacerbated by the fact that it's actually kind of difficult to follow along and keep track of what's where. But I still absolutely love the idea here. The fact that it's so heavy on role-playing, you could do this whole thing without combat, makes it really, really different, and it's a really different twist on the heist. And I've pictured a lot of heists that are like that. Usually it's just one act of the heist where you go into like a social setting, and you're meant to be sneaking around like this party, or there's people around and that kind of thing. I think that's just rife with great role-playing opportunities. So really, really cool scenario. According to plan, actually starts out as a typical MacGuffin heist. This one has one of the better adventure hooks in that there is a gnome whose contraptions like ran somebody over or killed them, and it ruined them financially and socially, and they made a Faustian deal with the devil to sell their war machine plans to Hell. And of course there's war machines are a big part of the Hell and the Blood War. And he has a change of heart and hires somebody to go and basically steal those plans back. And that person disappeared, and so now he goes to the players. So I think that's a neat hook. It's different than just a devil coming like, hey, I need your help with something. It's somebody that's actually like regrets and has more emotional stakes and everything. And the players go down, and it turns into a prison rescue mission, as they then have to rescue this person from prison, who was the initial person who was hired to steal the blueprints. And this one ends with a pretty thrilling climax, as well as the devils were able to build like a prototype of this Hellfire engine that the gnome inventor managed to make. So there's a really cool ending there, where you're trying to basically get the hell out of Dodge, which I like the ones that end in a really thrilling escape situation. 666 to Mephistar, first of all, it's a great title, is my number 2 favorite mission, and I literally wrote down in all caps on my notes, train-based dungeon. Train-based dungeon. What a cool idea. So this is the Frozen Wasteland one, and there is a Hell train. It's called the Kenia Hellfire Limited, that's got a powerful weapon called the Blackfire, which is an explosive that can harm demons through their fire immunity, and is being delivered to Mephistopheles, or so you think, who is the lord of the 8th level of Hell. And your job is to infiltrate this train and steal back this Blackfire. Really, really cool scenario. It reminds me of a modular board game in the fact that you can use basically whatever train components you want. Each one is like its own dungeon room with different elements and different challenges and situations, and you can pretty much put them in whatever order. There's only like 3 or 4 cars you have to use to like tell the story. Otherwise, you can just kind of stick whatever you want in there. You can make a big train, a small train, whatever order. Really, really cool idea. There's a lot of fun passengers you can meet. This one especially goes really far with the wackiness. I'm just going to read a passage because it's amazingly indicative of how great this adventure is. Tickets, please. When the party enters a train car, roll a d6. On a roll of 1, an Otyugh named Daryl is moving through the aisle. Otyughs are, of course, those tentacle, slobbering monstrosities that usually are found in like garbage piles. Among the few words that Daryl knows are tickets and please. The Otyugh collects tickets with one tentacle and delivers hot chocolates with the other. If a passenger does not have a ticket or other suitable proof that they should be on the train, Daryl eats them. Ah, that's fantastic. I love it. I love it. I would have a little bow tie on. I love that the Hell thing, be dark when it's appropriate to be dark, but also be really wacky and absurd, because I think that goes over especially well and works very well for levity, because Hell is obviously a very dark and nasty place, and you can still have a lot of fun with it, and I think the players can have a lot of fun with it as well. So really, really fun ideas throughout here. At one point, you can be on the train, and a bunch of Vroks led by a Nalfashni literally do the cowboy thing where they like ride up on nightmare horses and they board the train. Everybody's supposed to like, with guns drawn. Not guns drawn, but everybody's emptying out their wallets and stuff. What a fantastic opportunity for the players to play along with that, or how they react to that. Just a really, really cool idea. And then by the end of it, they actually figure out that this train is headed not to Mephistopheles, but towards a building, and it is designed to blow up with the Blackfire in there, as essentially turning this train into a weapon. And the players then have to decide, not only have to get the fuck off this train, but like, do we try and dismantle this? Do we disarm the Blackfire? Because there are like non-evil people on this train. So do we try to save them, or what's the moral complications there? And that's a really cool ending twist to deal with. So just a really, really neat idea for a train. I like the idea of a train-based dungeon through hell anyway. That's so fantastic. And then the final one is also, unfortunately, a little bit more of the ho-hum variety, especially coming off the train. Nessus, What's in a Name? This one deals with Asmodeus. And he's got a book that you're trying to steal back. There are different people that want that book, so you can work for one or work for the other. There's betrayal involved. Devil's always trying to one-up each other. There's a bunch of cool traps with this one. I don't even think you get much of a map here, though. Yeah, this is the extent of the maps, which are just bits and pieces. So unfortunately, the maps just do not work for this campaign. That's my biggest complaint really through the entire thing, is the fact that these maps are extremely disappointing for how good these adventures and heists are. They just absolutely nail all these different elements of the heist. Even the ones I think are just okay, I think they're still they're still pretty good. They're still pretty good heists. It's just that some of them are exceptionally really great. And then, okay, what are we at here? Page 230. Here's where the appendix starts. This is magic items. And I'm literally flipping through very quickly. Now we're in new monsters. You can see we've got new artwork here. Lots and lots of new devils and named NPCs. We're still going. We're at we're at 270. That was 40 pages of monsters and magic items, not including these handouts. These handouts are included as a separate zip file. So we do have these, but you can see the only real maps you have are these from Dees Protocol. These just kind of functional maps. The other ones aren't really doable battle map. Like, what is this? This is not good here. There is a contract included at one point, which is amazing. Where's the contract? This one. You get an actual devil contract. That's awesome. That's probably actually the best part. That was the Archdevil's Gambit, I believe, that you get it for. You get a full contract at the beginning, because you have to sign it to even work for it, where you get things. And there's a whole role-playing element where, like, one of the termination is I don't think you're supposed to talk about why you're there, so you can break your contract by saying anything, which is really cool and has obvious consequences. So that is a neat handout, but I do wish the maps were better. All right, let's go over my pros and cons for Hellbound Heists. Pros. Pro, 9 full-length detailed adventures that all take place in the layers of hell. That's a cool theme. That's a cool idea. Each layer of hell has its own setting, has its own major players, has its own complications in terms of the madness levels that go on it, which means each adventure has to go above and beyond and basically explain what its location is. It's not like you can just talk about hell in the beginning and then here's all the adventures. Each adventure has to have its own, like, here's how Kenia works, and here's how Dees works, and here's all the complications that are there. And that's a tall order, and that's why each of these adventures could be a separate adventure release on its own. Pro, there's a good variety of adventure styles, from stealthy heists to prison breaks and even a devil-filled ball. As I just went over with all the different adventures, a lot of really neat variety. I think the prison break is the most common one, and even that's only in like 3 of them. So a lot of good variety here. I mean, the train dungeon, the ballroom, the classic like break into the security place. Even if you're getting tired of the prison break, there's still a lot to be had. And then pro, I like there's 40 pages of new magic items and monsters, and then about 10 pages of player handout. So a lot of good stuff there. But my con, unfortunately, with the maps, only really one of the 9 adventures features player-ready battle maps, and even that map is just okay. It's not actually very attractive. It's just functional. The other ones, frankly, aren't very functional or attractive. None of them are given separate maps, or they're frankly hideous. I really, really wish we had some consistency here. It looks like every designer was just left to their own devices in terms of the map, which means the map quality is all over the place. I really wish that as part of this compilation, they'd all come up with a one single third party cartographer that could have done all of the maps in one unifying style, and a pretty good level of a separate handout and player ready and all that stuff. A certain level would have been really, really awesome to see that. Instead, the maps are the lowest point of this adventure, and so many of these heists require good maps. The prison ones all require you to have knowledge of the prison or the security system. Maybe the ballroom one doesn't necessarily need the ball in there, but if I'm playing on Roll20, I need some kind of visual aid for that, so that is a big disappointment. Final verdict, 9 layers of hell bequeath 9 excellent, highly detailed adventures for mid to high level parties in Hellbound Heists. Thank you to everyone for watching this video review. You can see my written review at roguewatson.com. You can support my work at patreon.com/roguewatson, and you can follow our own D&D adventures here on my YouTube channel. Thank you.